This webinar will hopefully provide some useful strategies for engaging with academic texts. As a quick overview, we'll be looking at reading as a process and some specific strategies for reading critically. To start with, we should consider what makes reading for school specifically a bit difficult. There are internal factors such as a lack of familiarity with the subject matter, difficult key terms being used, or just engaging with the genre of writing that we're not familiar with. But there are also external factors like familial, work, personal, and digital distractions. Like writing, reading is a process, and the process differs from person to person and context to context. When considering your own reading process, think about things such as how much time you need, ways that reading for school differs from reading for pleasure, what are specific reading goals you might have, such as wanting to gain specific information for a text or being able to read for a longer period of time, as well as systems for both breaks and rewards, such as reading for 30 minutes and then giving yourself a 10-minute break before going back to the text, and systems for following up once you've read information to make sure you're digesting it. What are you doing with the information you are reading through after you've finished the text? Are you taking notes after? Do you take notes while you read? Just take a moment to reflect on your process and maybe jot down some things that you currently do when you are engaging with a difficult or academic text. When you approach a reading task, it can help to have a purpose in mind. Why are you reading this text and what are you planning to get from it? What's the purpose for your reading and how will that determine your reading process? For example, reading a text to analyze it and get a better understanding of the overall meaning might lead you to read it differently than if you were engaging with a text to understand how an author developed their argument. Regardless of why you're reading something, you do want to keep in mind how the purpose might influence how you engage with it. Okay, so we've reflected on how we currently engage with academic text. We've considered how different purposes behind why we're reading something may shift the way that we engage with it. Let's now consider some different strategies from what we may already be implementing. One key strategy is to thoroughly prepare for a reading session, identifying supplies you may need, both academically, such as the actual text or a way to take notes, as well as external factors you may require, such as being in a quiet room with the door closed, or having a way to reward yourself with short breaks, maybe a snack after you've read a certain amount of pages. The key is to identify what you need to do to prepare for a reading session and ensure that you are able to do those things to the best of your ability. Another option is the SQ3R reading strategy. This acronym provides 5 key actions to take into account when you are reading a text. The first is to survey or skim the text. Note important standout features such as titles, graphics, subheadings. Next is to question, taking the key list of features, most likely subheadings, and turning them into questions. As you read through, you're looking for the answers to those subheadings, as well as noting down any questions you had. For example, if you're reading an article about reading strategies and one of the subheadings was identifying external distractions, you might then turn that subheading into how do you identify external distractions? And when reading through that section, you would look to see how is the source answering that question, as well as, again, noting down anything that you might have found confusing while you're reading through it. Which brings us to the next letter, which is, of course, to read. What meaning can you draw from the text? Once you've read through the text, you'll want to recite or summarize it in your own words without looking back at the text. How much of the information did you retain on your own? Once you've done that, you'll review everything you just did, your summary, the questions you had, any notes you took, and going back through the text, find ways to fill in the holes where you might have forgotten key pieces of information or still had questions A key aspect of learning through text is being able to recall and grapple with the material before you then take it to class. Of course, class is a place where you can question for more clarity and gain more understanding, but the SQ3R reading strategy is hoping to push you to gain a bit of that information on your own. Another practice that can help with this is to annotate as you are reading. Annotating simply calls for you to take notes as you're going through the text. This might be easiest with a physical piece of reading, but you can of course do this with digital text as well. But going through and doing things such as highlighting important information or defining key terms that are new to you. Similarly to the Q3R method, annotating is also a great way to both make note of questions that you may have as you're reading and to summarize each paragraph after you've gone through it. The connecting thread here is for you to be engaged with the text as opposed to just skimming through the words and not really retaining any of the information, but having an active experience as you're reading to find a way to retain this information and make it connect for you. No matter the method you're using, if you're reading an article with a lot of complex words and analysis, make an effort to understand, but don't get bogged down on the details. Focus on the author's explanations of the content's significance. One method you can try is reading the first and last sentence of each paragraph to try to summarize the paragraph just based off of the topic and conclusion statements. This isn't foolproof, but often authors will repeat their main points at the beginning and the end of a paragraph. So if you're getting lost in the hyper-specific details or complex terms being used, just boiling down an article to its key points can be done often by looking at the topic sentences of paragraphs. Ask questions, make notes, summarize to the best of your ability in your own words to see if you can tease out what is the argument or the point the author is making. You've got a few reading strategies under your belt, but remember that the writing process is not one you have to go through alone. Here at the Writing Center, we can help with all types of writing at any stage in your writing process. To schedule an appointment, simply go to mylmu.edu, click on Academics, and then click on Writing and Course Tutoring. It'll take you to the schedule where you can find availability throughout the week, both in person and online. Happy writing.